Honor thy father and thy mother in the days of your youth. If you honor your mother and father, it gives you purpose. Without a purpose, you can't have a plan. If you consider your mother and father to be the greatest things in your life, then you would realize you have to respect them and you have to justify the purpose for which they raised you. They give everything into your life before you could blow your own snotty nose. I would say more. I'll just simply say, and they cleaned you when you could even roll over. They loved you. My name is Laurence Paul Edward Huntley. I'm the son of James and Imelda Huntley, who were born in 1903. I was born in 1945, and the last of 8 children. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to state this, because over the course of life, the greatest lesson they have told me is that you must have faith, repetition, imagination, and persistence. And if you'd complete these 3 basic elements, you will be able to achieve in life almost anything. I'm grateful for that because they provided the means of ensuring all of us having a basic education. As the youngest, and they were old and retired, they weren't able to provide for me the means to go on to college. But I took the initiative of strong faith, having the courage to go up adverse circumstances, the imagination to create avenues of success, and persistence to not give up or give in. I was able to get a college education and go on to graduate and postgraduate school. I was born in Arima, Trinidad, a secondary town, somewhat urban, somewhat rural. And my father worked with the Trinidad government railway operations in transportation and communication. And where I grew up was a place where community was essential. Interaction with other people, interdependent. And my parents then moved on to Morville, Trinidad, which is about 3 miles outside of Port of Spain, Trinidad. It was a new housing complex, new schools, new buildings, new towns, new businesses, everything. It was a fresh start community. And I grew up in that area, and I was able to interact socially and intellectually with a wide spectrum of people. My mother was a reader. She read everything, even the newspapers from cover to cover. And I observed her doing these things. Interesting thing happened later in life when I was in secondary school. The assistant principal said, "Reading men are leading men." And I thought how significant was it. It was. My mother and father encouraged us to read. The key book was the Bible. And one thing that stuck out in my mind was what my mother said. She says, "Wait a minute. You have to recognize that the greatest author in the world wrote things down. In order to write things down, you must be able to read. You must be able to spell. And you must know the meanings of words to make it efficient." And I asked her, "Well, what was that? Who was that?" She said, "He wrote the 10 Commandments, but he didn't just write it, he wrote it in stone." He says that's the basic, highest principle of human existence. It is a guideline of how to live and how to treat other people. But he didn't write a big book about it. He wrote 10 commandments. And it was sufficient to cover mankind's behavior, respect, honor, integrity, loyalty, determination, and commitment, not only to themselves, but to each other. So if he could write things down and he created the universe, why can't you start writing things down? You might just get a great achievement through that. And so when I went on to school, I wrote almost every word ad verbatim, if it was possible, of the teacher's presentation. It was easy to fill in the blanks when I went home. It was easier to remember things. And I used that principle because I was short on paper many times. I had to pre-see things. And that has helped me considerably for me to go through college, to graduate school, and through postgraduate school. And it did good in my lectures and presentations when I worked in corporate America. Reading men are leading men. Historically, when someone became a lawyer, they said, he read for the bar. So reading and comprehension is very important. I must emphasize comprehension because when I was in graduate school, one professor told me, he says, don't bark at the words. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, pronunciation does not mean you're reading. Comprehension is when you're reading because you are extracting knowledge from a database. I never forgot that. And I shared that when I became a teacher in high school. I emphasized that the students know what they read. And that has helped considerably. I left home the 26th of December, 1966, on a chartered flight with a group of waiters and waitresses from Trinidad and Tobago. I hadn't had a lot of experience in the field, but the director, Mr. E.J. Lau, from the Trinidad and Tobago Hotel School, said, I need somebody who would provide the group leadership, a sense of direction and a mission. And it seems like you have that. I'm sending you, although you don't have the waiter experience. And I was sent to the Estate Carlton Hotel in St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands. I packed everything I had. My suitcase had two pieces of clothes. In all, I had one on, one off, one ready to wash. I left home and arrived with a motley bunch of young men and women, about 20 of us. And we stayed at the Estate Carlton employee accommodations. There were several units. Each had about 4 beds or in 2 bedrooms, 1 bath. And that was home for what we'll call an alien worker, a foreign worker. And I worked at the Estate Carlton as a busboy for several months, but one day there was a shortage of service operators. And I volunteered to assist as a waiter. Before long, I became the timekeeper, the bookkeeper, and provided the data for income. I learned very well from that. But then my numbers were great, and I had great experience in documentation of numbers, times, figures, and information. And one day I went to the bank to cash in my tips as well as my check. What happened there was life-changing. The teller could not calculate the numbers as quickly as I did mentally. And her supervisor saw what transpired. And when I was about to leave the bank, she said, come here. Introduced herself and says, would you like a job? I said, sure. She said, where do you work? I told her the Estate Carlton Hotel. She says, well, when do you work? I said, I work the evening shift. She said, then you could come on down here and work with me during the day. The reason for that is the guys wanted to work the day shift so that they could party in the evenings. I didn't have time for the partying. I was more considering what would be my next step in education and development. Fortunately, the bank's manager's brother visited the bank, and he was a professor at the local college. And he listened to me and observed the way I handled business. He says, "Is this what you want to do for the rest of your life?" I said, "Well, not really, but this is my best job right now." He said, "Look at it as that, but you should go on and get a college education. Are you going to college?" And he sowed that seed of intrigue in my mind that I started to pursue getting information about it. A few months later, I applied to the College of the Virgin Islands. I was living in St. Croix. The main office was in St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands. And I had to take the airboat to St. Thomas. I had a confirmed reservation at 7 in the morning, but didn't get on the plane until 3 in the afternoon because I was bumped by the politicians and people of significance. When I got to the campus, the entrance exams were over, and everyone who was supposed to take care of the processing were leaving. I still went up to the campus. As I walked up, students and faculty leaving kept saying, "It's Friday, they're gone. Everybody's leaving. There's nobody there." And all I said was, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." And I continued my part to the registrar's office. I got there were only two people, Mrs. Stewart, who was the Registrar of Financial Aid, and Mr. Mario Watlington, who was the Registrar of the university. He says, "You really want to go to college?" I said, "Yes." He said, "We need more people with your determination. I want you to write an essay on a book you've read and a notable statesman of the 20th century." Strangely enough, those were the two books the librarian gave me the week before when I'd go to the library at 3:30 in the afternoon because the sun was too hot for me to walk the 3 miles home. And I'd stay in the library till 6 o'clock. And she saw me and she said, "As a young man, what are you doing here when the boys are out there playing b-ball and chasing the girls?" I said, "B-ball, my hands are too small. I can't hold the ball, so I'm not good at it." She said, "What about the girls?" I say, "They are major expenses. I'm not making enough money for that." And she laughed at it. But she said, "I have two books I want to share with you." And she gave me the book, The Mayor of Casterbridge by Sir Thomas Hardy. I read the book. It was intriguing. It was the last book I read in high school for my English literature course. The second book was a book on Sir Winston Churchill. I said, "I'll take the book." But when she handed it to me with 365 pages, I was stunned. I wish I had accepted it. Nonetheless, those two books gave me the information required to answer the two questions and write the two essays, the one-page essays for the register at the university. When he got it, he was profounded. He looked at me and he says, "What's that you're scribbling on that?" I said, "Well, I was just writing a comparison and contrast of the two books." He said, "Give that to me." He read it and sent me downstairs to have my picture taken for my college ID. I was totally amazed that things worked that quickly. I got my ID, I kissed it all the way back up to the office. I was so happy. And the following week, I was in college. I had nowhere to stay, but I had written on my application that I had done work. I had done work in the hotel, that I made beds when they had a shortage of staff, that I cleaned rooms to pick up extra change. And he said, "Great, you know what? We need a dormitory manager." And I was startled at the thing. I said, "What do I do?" He said, "Well, you take care of the linens and you take care of the dormitory. You keep it clean and you will be rewarded for it." He said, "Oh, by the way, you get room and board." In all honesty, I didn't know what board was. I knew what room was. So I accepted the offer And he said, you have a place to stay and you will get your meals free. That was an incredible breakthrough because I was not even knowledgeable enough to know I needed extra money for living and accommodations and whole 9 yards. And there I got into college with all the bells and whistles I needed to finish my first year. My first semester, actually. At the end of the first semester, I was Athlete of the Year. At the end of the first semester, I had a 3-point average. I ended up on the president's list. And this was an incredible breakthrough. That's how things really started. But a lot of things happened after that. That was just the foundation to give me a startup. I committed myself that I was going to be the best athlete I can, and I'm going to be academic as possible. Both I accomplished, because for 3 consecutive years I was Athlete of the Year. It also provided the attention, came to the attention of the president of the university, Dr. Laurence Huntley. And he came down to the cafeteria to find out who I was. And when he discovered I was not on a scholarship, he says, we have athletes on scholarships, but not making the contribution you're making. I'm going to write you up for scholarship. And I was able, because I was such a scared cat, not knowing whether I'd have the resources to finish the first semester, the second or the third or the fourth, I took all the classes I needed so that I could pick up an associate's degree. At the end of my first year, I got an associate's degree in hotel restaurant administration. And that then provided me the qualifications to get jobs off campus to work in the catering business with the director of the program. The second year, I got an associate's degree in business management. In the third year, which is my 4th year on campus, I got my bachelor's degree in business administration. The students were all excited. I was too, because I had brought my mother and father up from Trinidad to attend my bachelor's graduation. And when I stood on stage, the students shouted, the thermometer, the thermometer, the thermometer. And I thought I was in hot water, but then I discovered they were saying thermometer because I had a lot of degrees. I have been blessed with these opportunities. One day, I had gone down to the administrative office to see if I can speak with the dean of students, because the college elections, college student elections was in progress, but it was disorganized. So I wrote a plan of how it should be structured. And I went to see him, and he said, hey, I can't see you right now. Give me some time. So I left and went into the main auditorium, which was behind the administrative offices. And I sat down the highest level seat because there were about 20 people in the front row speaking to an elderly man. When I walked in, he says, hey, come on here. You don't have to be afraid. Come on front. I didn't know what it was, but he insisted. So I walked down front, and he said, hey, in this business, you must be able to meet and greet people, and you can't be shy. Here is the test. I ended up taking the test, not even knowing what it was. But 2 days later, I received a letter in the mail from Eastern Airlines saying, you have been selected as a future employee of Eastern Airlines. You score very well on the test. That gave me the break. That spiraled me into many other things. I worked with Eastern Airlines in St. Thomas and in customer service and baggage handling and the whole 9 yards, from A to Z, in cargo. And eventually, when I graduated, I went to Florida on a trip, ended up at the Eastern Airlines headquarters. And when I told them what my qualifications were, they said, hey, do you want a job in management? I said, of course. I did not go back to the Virgin Islands. They put me on a plane the next day and sent me to Newark Airport. I got there. It's a management position in customer service. However, I'm sorry, I can't hire you. However, I'm going to send you to Hartford. Hartford needs somebody up there because there's so many people here in Newark who are already doing the job, you wouldn't have an easy time working with the same people who you've cut off. So
Let me ask you a question. Before you did that, when did you meet your wife?
when did I?
What year did you meet your wife?
Oh, okay. In 1968, the end of my freshman year at the College of the Virgin Islands, I was working part-time with Virgin Islands National Bank as a teller. So I worked on Thursdays, Fridays, and sometimes on Saturdays. But on Thursday and Friday, when I worked at the bank, I worked at the drive-through window because I had great mental dexterity. And not only that, I had the ability and experience of having worked in St. Croix as a teller in the bank. And I expedited things. I kept the line moving in the drive-through. And one day I was doing the drive-through, and a young lady came up to the window, very attractive. And I couldn't resist talking to her. But she was so enthralled, she took a paste stub, her envelope, the receipt, and left her money with me. I had to shut the window down and run through the lobby to catch her, to give her her money. I was tickled, she was tickled. But when I got back in, my supervisor was not tickled. She spoke to me very seriously about it, giving me a fear of losing my job. Nonetheless, Christmas came, and there was the bank's party. And she says, "Why don't you come to the bank's party?" And I find it strange. I figured she was trying to make up because she was really tough on me for running through the lobby, shutting down the window on a Friday. She said, "Come." I said, "Give me one good reason to come." I didn't want to attend because I considered so many old fogies there. They talk about profit sharing, dividends, and all these things. And I wasn't getting any of that. So what happened is, I said, "Give me a good reason why I should come." She says, "They have food, free food." As a college student on a weekend with free food, I was sold. I said, "What time is it?" I showed up for the party, and everything was going well, but I was bored. And oh, by the way, beer was free. So I had a couple of beers. I'm not a drinker. So I was about to make a exit to get rid of the excess liquid when the band stopped and the dividends discussion ceased. I'm walking across the dance floor, and I saw this young lady, the only young one at the party. I was glued to her, so I hustled up and caught in the middle of the walkway. Said, "Hi there." "What a angel like you doing down here?" And she just fell out laughing. It was the corniest line I had ever used. She said, "What you mean by that?" I said, "Is heaven on holiday?" She stumbled because it was her first time in high heels, I believe, dressed for the occasion. So I grabbed her hand, balanced her off, and started to talk, continued to talk. And the band struck up. I said, "You want to dance?" We danced. We danced 4 consecutive sets. Wouldn't let her go. And then the band stopped playing. And as I let her go and heading for the bathroom, I heard a call. It was my supervisor. She said, "Hi, I'd like you to meet somebody." I said, "Who?" And then she called, who is my wife now 50 years later. And she says, "Hey, I want you to meet her." I said, "Who, Norma?" And she was shocked, knowing my ability and verbal dexterity that I might have influenced her daughter too. And she said, "How long you know her?" And she called out to her daughter. She said, "You know him?" And she said, "Yes." And her mother was appalled that her daughter had gone behind her back and met with me. As a matter of fact, she thought back then that I was predatory. Nonetheless, 50 years later, she has been my wife and the woman of my life. And 2 children later, and 2 grandchildren later, we're still going along. Wonderful, thank God. While working at Eastern Airlines, I put together, there were no black travel agencies.
And what year was this?
This was 1976. So I looked through my sales book and I saw a pattern that black travel agents would work up to 21, 22, 23 months at an agency, and then they'll be laid off, and they wouldn't show up anywhere else in my sales books for another 3 months. And then they would run another 11 months, and they'd get dropped. The American Airline Association certified you based on 12 to 24 consecutive months of work as a ticket agent and doing the books. These black agencies were running all their business through white agencies. Black travel agents were running the business through white agencies. And they would let them go just before they're qualified for permanent certification or licensing to open up their own agency. May I correct myself? They should do it for 24 months. They'll always end up at 23, 22, 21 months. So when I found that out, I started to speak to the black travel agents. And they confirmed my observation. So what I did, I would look at them, monitor them, and just before their 22 or 23rd month, I go tell another white agency, hey, I got somebody good for you. And they could bring $20, $50, $100,000 worth of business. You want them? Go in? Yeah, want them. I called the agent and talked to them. I said, do you want to take it? I had to be very careful because some people tattle back on you. Well, I found 2 successful agents, and they agreed to transfer. So there was continuity for 24 months of them doing ticketing. Now they were qualified to open their own agency. So I got a couple agencies opened. And then the guys in the office got mad at me because they were friendly with some of these agents they had given over to me. And they were part of the game, but I couldn't talk about it. Nonetheless, when it happened, Miami found out. And the vice president of Eastern Airlines, a black former pilot from Haiti, Jim Clinton was his name, the only black president, vice president with Eastern. I invited him to a black travel agents meeting in Chicago. A year later, I had approximately about 25 to 30 black agents, and we met in a big restaurant out in Oak Brook. And he financed the whole deal. And for the first time, black travel agents were able to go to a formal dinner, especially luncheons prepared for them, not only to meet a regional manager, but to meet a vice president of Eastern Airlines as a keynote speaker. They were overwhelmed. And with that, at that meeting, I also invite the black destinations. I invited Puerto Rico, I invited the Bahamas, I invited the U.S. Virgin Islands, I invited Jamaica, regional travel representative, tourism officer, and they came, and Mr. Clinton was overwhelmed by the fact, wow, you got the creme de la creme here to meet with me. And in the process, the regional tourism director for the U.S. Virgin Islands called the Virgin Islands and said, hey, you need a tourism director down there. We got a guy who went to school down there, who is working up here, who knows the thing, and he has good connections in the airline industry. Maybe he should be your next director of tourism for local operations. I got a call on the job from Dr. August Rimple from the U.S. Virgin Islands Department of Commerce asking me to come down for an interview. Would I like to be the next tourism director?
What year was this?
That was 1977. I flew down. They sent me round trip first class tickets, despite the fact I could have had a free trip on Eastern Airlines with confirmed space because I was in management. But I couldn't do that because I was going to interview for a job to leave Eastern. So I had to take the tourism office. I went down there and I told him. I didn't say yes or no. I said okay. Came back to Chicago. There was another ticket by the time I got here. And I flew down. I became Assistant Director of Tourism and Director of Local Operations for the U.S. Virgin Islands. Just after the Fountain Valley Massacre, where 2 local youths had killed about 6 people, gunned them down at the Fountain Valley Golf Course, including Eastern Airline pilots. And the tourism industry was at 38% performance. Break even was 40. I got down there and I created a festival called the Jambola Festival. Music, sound, dance, entertainment. All local talent. Pulled it off. It was Friday evening, Saturday, Sunday. Downtown Christian said. Most of them were amateur musicians who couldn't get jobs because they attracted the local hang-ons. I call them the cling-ons. They follow the band around. And the hoteliers who were home-based from New York and other places, they didn't want the local crowd coming into the hotels. And so they hired New York bands, New Orleans bands to play. And I got feedback from tourists, because I mingled with them, and say, where's the local music? Where's the local entertainment? We got some second-rate New Orleans bands, and most of these guys are drunk. What can you do about it? So I created the Jambola Festival to expose the local talent. They had song, dance, music, and entertainment, and art. And I wrote a theme song called the Jambola song. I'll give you a little bit of it. Jambola is my music. Jambola is my culture. Its roots are far and wide. Jambola is my song, my dance. I cherish it with pride. Jambola is my music, the songs that I dance to. Jambola reminds me of my talents as of new. Instead of sitting idle all summer wasting time, instead of making mischief, I can occupy my mind while creating beauty, sound art, and motion too, and let the world recognize my talents as of new. Jambola. I had the local talent sing the song as the theme song for the Jambola Festival. It ran for 3 nights. It drew 10,000 people in a tiny community of maybe 20,000 for 3 consecutive nights. Oh, not one pickpocket, not one break-in, not one robbery, not one stick-up occurred over that weekend when the newspaper were running an average of 5 incidents every weekend. And that set up the stage that was different, but it demanded that local talents be hired. It happened with a little opposition, so the president of the Hotel Association, I'll name names, Miss Betty Sperber, called on some of the politicians she financed their campaign and told them it's time to get rid of me. I left before they could take any action. I resigned and came back to the United States. Taking steps that would make life better for the next generation. All the things that we enjoy were created by someone else. And all gratitude for that is that we create something that would make life better for others. You know what? I have faith. I have ambition. I have gratitude. Gratitude is the first law of gains. I didn't make me who I am. I'm not going to take the credit. It's my godly spirit. Sometimes when I achieve, I forget and my foot slip. But I want people to know, with God, all things are possible. I have living evidence. I have certificates and documentation, the whole 9 yards. That, with God, all things are possible. If you're grateful over few things, He makes you master over many. I was grateful for one idea. And that idea was, your mom and dad opened the doors, now run. And I took that step, and everything I did along the way, I remembered I did it out of the gratitude of what they sacrificed to bring me to what I am and create the consciousness. I'm the last of 8 kids. Everyone has a college degree. That's a major achievement for a man born in 1903. Okay? My wife, my mother never worked a job in her life because her fulfillment was raising the kids. She stood at 5'4". At 14, I was towering over her. But if she said jump, I would say, Mom, how high? And I say it with a joy in my heart because when I reflect on who she was, she stood 10 feet tall. 8 kids, every one of them finishing college, many of them with numerous degrees. My brother was a retired pathologist from New York Medical Center. My eldest sister, whose funeral I went to in London last year, she was on the Queen's Council of Nursing. Whenever the Queen is in her community, she's put on active duty. She was married to a British Air Force captain, which gave her further access. I think it's the Queensborough Air Fair. She attended that. That is where all the jets and military equipment is displayed. And actually, that's the marketing program. But my sister after who also lives in Lincoln is a chest and lung nurse. The one after her was a director of of senior healthcare in Port of Spain. The one after her was a radiographer at Port of Spain General Hospital. The one after her was a director of central bank funding in Port of Spain, Trinidad. The one after her was my brother, who lives in Port Alderley. He retired engineer with Martin Marietta in Ohio, and I'm the youngest. I have 5 college degrees without a high school diploma because they instill faith in me. Your question earlier, what would you tell the youth today? They have to develop their spiritual values unapologetically. If you could honor anything else, develop spiritual values and have godly principles. Nothing is wrong with godly principles because God is love and He provides the direction. With that, all the blessings come. All the blessings come. And you do not look at material gain as your first goal. Where you're blessed to show love, understanding, empathy. Empathy means being able to help communities, individuals. That's where the richness of life comes in. Because you come into this world with nothing. And the only reason you know you exist is because you are a living soul, the breath of life. Do you see oxygen? No. But if they take it away from you, that's how they know you're dead, when you're not breathing. So what you have to look at, not only the material things in life, but look at the spiritual values. Love, kindness, understanding, generosity. Give people hope, not despair. If you could do that, your life is worth living. Because when you leave here, you don't take a dime with you. But if you have a spiritual life in your physical body, when the physical dies, the spiritual never dies. Because we talk about some men, and you've heard it, in the spirit of Martin Luther King. What embodied him was his character of hope, of love, of understanding, of faith, of determination, of gratitude. I could remember hearing the success of a man is not by how much he acquired, but how much he has given. He is doing great in his field, as he has been one of the outstanding bodybuilders. Just started last year and placed third in the Midwest Championships, and has maintained his efforts in trying to improve upon last year's performance. I feel very proud of it. I'm glad that he's not only physically but mentally alert.